So we now start the second half of the Major Arcana, which I'm going to be doing. And today I'm going to be starting the second half with Justice. So the Fool on his journey has basically now transitioned from the Wheel of Fortune to Justice. In other words, he has kind of gone from acceptance to accountability. And what I mean by that is that with the Wheel of Fortune, it's very much about accepting that life comes in cycles, that life can be unpredictable and external forces can have a big impact on what the outcome of certain things may be, and how fate very much plays a part in what you may experience and what may happen and what outcomes may be for you. But when we reach the Justice card, or when the Fool reaches the Justice card on his journey, it then kind of shifts to become less about accepting the cycles and the flow of life and how things can be very unpredictable, to actually being more about accountability and talking about how it's where the Fool realises that actually, although there are unpredictable events that can happen and external forces can play a major part in what happens and the outcomes of things, that accountability for oneself is also really important, because actions have consequences, and that is what the Justice card talks about. So as the Fool kind of travels through the Major Arcana on his journey and he reaches Justice, this is where he realises that his actions have consequences, be that good or bad, and that justice and truth will always be a major part of his evolution and where he will end up on his path ultimately. The Justice card very much talks about the role of personal responsibility, the decisions that we make and the actions that we take, and how all of that can very much be what determines the outcome of what we are trying to achieve. So going away from kind of the acceptance of fate, destiny, the cycles of life, and how that is going to have an impact on what happens, but more about personal responsibility and how that our actions will create either a desired outcome or a not so good outcome, depending on the action that we take. So now we will get into the symbolism on the Justice card.
So now looking at the symbolism of the Justice card. The figure in this card is in a seated position. The seated position indicates stability and authority. The fact that the figure is seated between two pillars would also indicate impartiality. So now looking at the robes and the cloak that the figure is wearing. So the whole outfit, the robes and the cloak, would indicate or symbolise the official capacity associated with the role of dispensing justice. The colour red of the robes indicates power and passion, and the gold of the cloak symbolises enlightenment and truth, higher or spiritual awareness, and higher morals and truth and justice. So the crown that the figure is wearing would indicate authority and the sovereignty of justice over all concerns. It shows that this is a figure who is in the position of power and responsibility. Now, if you can see, just at the bottom here, there's a little foot that is poking out, and that is also important. You can sometimes miss some of the symbolism in tarot, so it's really good to look at your cards and study them, because it's quite interesting what might actually pop out to you. So the foot would represent groundedness and the practical aspect of justice being applied in the real world. So there is a lot of enlightenment and spiritual knowledge that is passed through to justice in this card, but it's important to keep our awareness on the fact that what's being dealt with is very much of the physical reality, and so groundedness and that practical approach is obviously needed. So now moving on to the scales, which are in the left hand, which would represent the subconscious side. Now the scales symbolise balance, fairness, and the weighing of evidence, the need for equilibrium in decision making, and the assessment of actions and their consequences. And then in the other hand, on the right side, which would be the conscious side, the figure is holding a sword. So the sword represents power, and the power to enforce truth and decisions. The sword is representative of being able to cut through illusions and to be able to deliver justice. Swords also represent clarity and truth and focus. Now, as we mentioned before, that the figure is sat between two pillars, speaking about impartiality, but also the pillars on their own would symbolise balance, law and structure. They are also thought to be the entrance to the Temple of Wisdom. In between the two pillars here, we have a veil, a red veil, and it's plain. It doesn't have like with in the High Priestess, there's pomegranates between the pillars. There's a lot of scenery. Whereas in this card, the Justice card, although it's quite a similar setting, sat between the two pillars, it's very plain. And the reason that this veil here is depicted as a plain veil is it actually indicates, again, impartiality, being between the two pillars, and it's about focus on the matter at hand without distraction from external forces. And so therefore that is why it is a plain veil, so as to show that it is about focus and not being distracted. The yellow would stand for clarity, wisdom, truth, enlightenment, and also a higher power. The ability to be able to make decisions, fair and just decisions, through self-awareness and being able to tap into a higher power, so like an eternal wisdom. That is all with the symbolism, and later today I will be posting another video to talk about the different meanings that we can take when looking at justice